The elevator doors opened with a ding as Richard Lane, CEO of the global tech giant Lanix Corp., stepped into the lobby of his sleek, mirrored headquarters. It was just past 6 a.m. The city outside was still stretching into the day, but Richard had already downed 2 espressos and was reviewing quarterly projections in his mind. As he crossed the polished marble floor, he noticed something unusual: singing. A soft, melodious voice echoing in flawless French drifted from the janitor's closet. Richard paused. Curiosity piqued, he took a step closer. Inside, a tall man in faded overalls was gently humming and muttering lines in what sounded like French poetry. When Richard tapped lightly on the doorframe, the man turned around, startled. "Oh, good morning, sir," he said in crisp, neutral English, his mop still in hand. Richard narrowed his eyes. "That was Baudelaire, wasn't it?" The janitor gave a shy smile. "Yes, sir. Limitation au voyage. You speak French?" The man nodded. "Among others." Richard stepped in, intrigued. "How many others?" The janitor wiped his hands on a rag. 9, sir. Fluent. I used to teach linguistics." For a moment, the CEO could only stare. Then he laughed softly, unsure if this was a prank or the most interesting start to a Monday he'd ever had. "What's your name?" "Luis. Luis Navarro." Richard couldn't get Luis out of his head all day. At lunch, he asked his assistant to pull Luis's HR file. What he found floored him. Luis Navarro had a PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Barcelona. He had worked at several prestigious universities across Europe before immigrating to the U.S. 6 years ago. But then, nothing. A gap in employment. A sudden job as a janitor. No explanation. That evening, as staff trickled out, Richard waited for Luis in the lobby. "You're overqualified to be cleaning floors," he said gently. Luis offered a tired smile. "Maybe, but qualifications don't change paperwork. I came here after my wife passed. Started over. My degree wasn't recognized, and I needed to provide for my daughter. So I took what I could. And your daughter? She's in middle school. Top of her class. Loves astronomy." Richard stared at the man, humble, brilliant, unseen. "I want you to come upstairs tomorrow," Richard said suddenly. "Not as janitor. As a guest. I have a meeting with our international clients. You'll sit in." Luis blinked. "Sir? You'll translate. We'll talk later about a position." Luis nodded slowly, unsure whether to believe this moment was real. The next morning, the boardroom was full of tension. The company had recently acquired a European subsidiary, and the teams were struggling to collaborate. Miscommunication was costing millions. Then Richard walked in with Luis. Whispers flew. Why was the janitor here? But when the Spanish executive spoke, Luis answered fluidly. When the German team interjected, he translated with grace. When the French delegate pushed back, Luis not only translated but mediated, turning arguments into agreements. The room fell silent in awe. No interpreter had ever done that, not with such calm, effortless dignity. When the meeting ended, one of the German partners asked, "Where did you find this man?" Richard smiled. "He found us." Later that week, Richard called an all-staff meeting. The entire company crowded into the auditorium. Employees leaned against walls and filled staircases. A buzz ran through the crowd. People knew something big was coming. Richard stepped onto the stage. "I want to tell you a story," he began, "about a man who's been here for 3 years, unnoticed by most of us. He mopped our floors, took out our trash, and always smiled. But what none of us knew was that he also speaks 9 languages and holds a doctorate in linguistics. Gasps echoed. He is a reminder of how often we overlook greatness, not because it hides, but because we stop paying attention. Then he turned to Luis, who stood off to the side, unsure whether to smile or cry. From today forward, Luis Navarro will be the new director of global communications at Lanex Corporation. The crowd erupted. People stood applauding. Some wiped away tears. In the weeks that followed, the entire office culture shifted. People looked each other in the eye more. They greeted the cleaning staff by name. Employees started sharing stories, not just resumes. Luis's daughter got a scholarship from Lanex's foundation to attend a top science camp that summer. Richard even took her telescope shopping himself. One afternoon, as Richard walked past the old janitor's closet, he heard something again. This time, it was Luis teaching an intern basic Japanese. He smiled. Because sometimes, the greatest talent is hidden in the humblest roles. And sometimes, the people we overlook carry the wisdom to help us build bridges we never knew we needed. Never judge a person's potential by the uniform they wear. Kindness, attention, and opportunity can unlock greatness hidden in plain sight.